Hello and welcome to Lesson 2 of the Foundations of Reading Test Prep series. This video is proudly presented by foundationsofreading.com, and if you need to take and prepare and pass this exam, you're going to want to stick around until the end where we are going to be completing 25 questions as well as an example constructed response. So let's begin. I'm going to click My Prep to log in to my prep at foundationsofreading.com. In lesson number 1, we completed all about this all about this test, which was the framework of your exam. And in this lesson, we are going to be completing a diagnostic practice test. So let's get started. Let's go to the diagnostic test. And this diagnostic test includes a total of 25 multiple choice questions and, like I mentioned earlier, 1 written response. And so we are going to be timed. We have to complete this within 45 minutes. And what I will do for you watching this video is that I'm going to be reading the question. I'm going to be actually taking this like I would just normally, as if I was preparing for the Foundations of Reading, but I'll give you a couple seconds so that you can just hit the pause button. And then what I would highly suggest for you to do is to actually select the best response, and then I'll go over the correct answer. Okay, so this is going to be an excellent preparation video, tool, and resource. And yeah, if you have to pass the Foundations of Reading test, do make sure that you get access to foundationsofreading.com test prep. The diagnostic test lives at the second step in our test prep, and we're just going over this together. But you know, your brain activates differently when you actually take the test. So if you're going to watch this, excellent. We're going to be going over not only the correct responses, but also the explanations. But I would highly actually suggest that you click the link in the description, get access to this, take it yourself first, and then come back for all of the explanations. All right, let's go and start the diagnostic test. Let me just zoom out here. All right, so question number 1 reads, which of the following tasks represents the most fundamental level of phonological awareness? Now, I'll just zoom in here so that we can see this a little bit better, but what you'll want to do is you'll want to pause the video, read the answer options A, B, C, and D. I'm going to be doing that as well, and then come back and we will select the best response together. And just to note, let's see here, we have the clock is running, so this really helps build our stamina for test day. All right, here we go. All right, so as I read, let's see here, most fundamental level of phonological awareness, that would be B, clapping to count the number of syllables in a word. So remember that there are different levels of phonological awareness. Think about here like phoneme deletion and phoneme segmentation, phoneme substitution, and you're going to want to know all of these for your exam. And in case you still need to actually get a great refresher for all of these technical terminologies, they're all listed in the study guide. Okay, so, and again, in case, once we complete the diagnostic test, then all of these in our exam prep opens up, and the study guide is right there. So I'm going to go ahead and select B. Let's go on to question 2. A 5th grade teacher wants to build students' deep understanding of the word infer before reading a social studies article. Which instructional activity would most effectively develop this depth of word knowledge? Pause the video, take a look at the answer options, select the best one. All right, now generating original sentences in multiple contexts, it's going to require active processing of the word's meaning and to build flexible kind of word knowledge for our students and help them become better independent readers. For that reason, I'm going to go ahead and select A, generating sentences using infer and discussing how meaning shifts. Question 3. A 3rd grade student encounters the word unbreakable and asks what it means. Which instructional approach would most effectively teach the student to determine the word's meaning independently? Is that going to be A, B, C, or D. All right, so this is a clear example of morphemic analysis. Think about here, morphology. Remember, that is identifying and interpreting. We have this word, unbreakable. We've got the root word, break. We have the prefix un, which means not, and then the suffix able, which means ability to. For that reason, I'm going to go ahead here. Best instructional strategy would be to help the students analyze the prefix, the base, and the suffix in order to understand the word. Here we go. Let me just zoom out here. I'm a little bit zoomed in, right? A third grade student receiving Tier 2 small group intervention has shown no measurable growth in oral reading fluency after 10 weeks of repeated reading, decodable text practice, and phonics review. Which next step is most consistent with evidence-based practice? Is that going to be A, B, C, or D? Pause the video, find the selection that you would pick, and then we'll go over it together. All right, when a student shows no growth after reasonable intervention periods, well, evidence-based practice, what you're going to be tested on for Foundations of Reading, is going to ask you to find a deeper investigation to identify the specific skill breakdown. For that reason, I'm going to go ahead here, conduct a targeted diagnostic assessment to identify skill deficits. We really need to understand the issue, the reading issue the student is having, so that we can find the correct solution for this student. Next up, let me just zoom out a little bit. Looks like we're on question 5. And remember, one strategy when taking your exam is to actually read the question first and then the text. All right. A 5th grade teacher uses this passage to teach literary analysis. Which question would most effectively prompt students to analyze how the author uses word choice to reveal contrasting character perspectives? The last peach of summer hung from the tree. Grandma Rose called it stubborn, but Delia thought it was brave. Every morning she walked the dirt path just to look at it. Some mornings the wind shook the other branches hard. The peach held on. All right, is it A, B, C, or D? I'll zoom in so you can read it. Here we go. What would you choose? All right, option B, let's go right there, asks students to compare two characters' word choices for the same object and analyze what each word reveals about the character's worldview. So I would go ahead and choose option B. Next up, looks like we have another table here. All right, a 4th grade teacher asks 2 students to identify the text structures present in the same informational science article. Based on the data in the table, what conclusion can best be supported? So go ahead, read the table here, and then take a look at the answer options below. What would you choose? While you're looking at that, I'm going to do the same. All right, the table clearly shows that student B found the glossary while student A did not. Student B found the glossary, but student A did not. And that's what we see in answer option B. Next up, let's go here and click next. There we go. We've got another table. In which row is the word accurately matched to its number of phonemes? All right, so checking your understanding of phonemes, what would you choose? Is it bright, cloth, phone? 12. All right, so I'm going to go ahead with row 1, word bright. Bright contains exactly 4 phonemes, B, R, I, T, right? So remember that phonemes are different than spelling. We have B, I, and T. That's 4. Let's move on to our next question. A 1st grade teacher takes a running record as a student reads a grade level text aloud. Based on the running record, which conclusion best describes the student's reading behavior and its instructional implication? Take a look at both the table above and the answer options. And while you do that, I'm going to do the same. right, which one are we going to choose here? Okay, so the student's self-corrections, stopping midway, attempting again, and arriving at the correct pronunciation. These are all hallmarks, really, of active self-monitoring and phonics applications. I'm going to go here and select option A. Is that what you got too? Nice. Moving on, we have question number 9. Let me just zoom in. Now we don't have a table. A second grade teacher notices that a student consistently spells watch as no T, match as no T, kitchen as no T. These spelling errors suggest the student would most benefit from targeted instruction in which of the following areas. Pause the video, find the answer option that's best, and come back for the answer. All right, each error here shows the student is capturing the correct consonant sounds but omitting that TCH. This is called a trigraph. And so for that reason, I'm going to select option B. Next up, a 5th grade teacher wants students to monitor their own understanding while reading a complex informational text about the water cycle. Which strategy would most directly support this goal? Take a moment here to read all 4 answer options. Which would you pick? All right, now I'm taking a look at this. Stopping at section breaks to paraphrase and flag confusion is what's called a metacognitive self-monitoring strategy. And students here can evaluate their own understanding using this strategy. I'm going to go ahead and select option B, stopping at each section to summarize key ideas. This will directly support this understanding of new informational text. All right, moving on. We are at question 11. We have 35 minutes. We're doing great. Let's go ahead and read this together. In a multi-tiered system of supports for reading, which of the following best describes the purpose of Tier 2 intervention? So note here, remember there are 3 tiers that you'll be tested on, Tier 1, 2, and 3. Make sure you have a good understanding of all 3. Take a moment here to read the answer options and come back for the answer. All right, I just finished looking at answer options A, B, C, and D. Tier 2 provides supplemental support in small groups for students whose needs exceed that core instruction that everyone gets, the whole class gets. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead here and select option B. Moving on, we are at question number 12. We have a table. Let's start with the question. A 3rd grade teacher administers oral reading fluency probes on the same 100-word passage over 3 consecutive weeks. Based on the data, which conclusion best describes the student's development and the most appropriate instructional response? Okay, let me zoom out here so you can see both the table and the answer options. There we go. All right, so I'm looking at the table. The data shows to me that improvement from week 1 to 2, so 68 to 75 word count per minute with fewer errors, and then followed by a sort of plateau in week 3. So this pattern suggests that the student is responding to instruction, but then has stalled. I'm going to go here. Initial growth has plateaued. Maintain repeated reading. So just provide more repeated reading exercises, and that will be what I would choose. Moving on to question 13, a 4th grade student encounters reluctant in this sentence. Even though the field trip sounded exciting, Maya was reluctant to get on the bus because she had never traveled so far from home. The teacher wants to teach a context clue strategy. Which approach best supports this goal? Pause the video, pick the solution, and come back for the answer. All right. Now, the sentence contains an explicit context clue. Even though the trip sounded exciting and she had never traveled so far from home. These signal hesitation or an unwillingness from the student. So teaching students to identify and use the surrounding clues builds the transferable word meaning strategy. I'm going to go ahead and select C, identify surrounding words. Moving on. A teacher says the individual sounds a, p, and asks students to put the sounds together to say the whole word. This activity primarily builds students' ability to A, B, C, or D. I'm going to zoom in here, select what would you choose? I'm going to read it too. Let's come back for the answer. We are on 14. Okay. So when a teacher presents sounds in isolation and students combine them with a whole word, think like, as the example, map, that is phoneme blending. Blend separate spoken phonemes into a word. Next up, a second grade teacher wants to improve students' oral reading fluency by increasing both rate and expression while maintaining accuracy. Which instructional approach is most directly supported by research on fluency development? Fluency is a really important topic on your exam. Make sure that you have a really good understanding of the 3 legs of fluency. Remember, that's accuracy, rate, and prosody, as well as how to teach them and how to assess for them too. All right, so this is question 15, and as I read the answer options, repeated reading with explicit teacher modeling and feedback is a well-researched instructional strategy that works. I'm going to go ahead and click C. Next up, a first grade teacher administers a brief reading assessment to all students at the beginning of the school year to identify those who may be at risk for reading difficulties before instruction begins. This type of assessment is best described as: is it summative, diagnostic, progress monitoring, or is it a screener? It is a screener. All right, next up. A third grade teacher is helping students identify the organizational structure of an informational text that explains what triggers hurricanes, what damage they produce, and how communities respond to that damage. Which text structure does this passage most clearly represent? All right, so this passage would, it's organized around causes. So what triggers hurricanes? And think about effects. What's the damage produced by them? So then the response here would be cause and effect. Next up, a second grade teacher has students reading at significantly different levels during guided reading. Which grouping approach is most consistent with evidence-based differentiated instruction? Pause the video, read answer options A, B, C, and D. I'm going to go with option B, flexible groups revised regularly as assessment data changes. Is that what you got too? Remember, group shift as students grow. Students can kind of test into groups, test out of groups. It's consistently flexible. Moving on, a kindergarten teacher says a word aloud and asks students to raise a finger for each sound they hear one at a time while counting silently. Which phonemic awareness skill does this activity primarily develop? Is it onset and rhyme, syllable, phoneme, blending, or or phoneme segmentation? So this activity requires the students to isolate and track each individual phoneme in a sequence. And for that reason, we're going to go with segmentation, because they are breaking apart the word and they're putting up their finger each time that they hear a part of it. Next up, a reading interventionist monitors a second grade student's oral reading fluency over 2 weeks. After 8 weeks, the scores are 42, 45, 43, and 49 word count per minute. Which conclusion is most appropriate based on this data pattern? So the scores have an upward trend with one mid-period dip. indicating some but inconsistent growth. So 8 weeks of limited progress warrants examining whether the intervention intensity needs adjustment. And I'm going to go here and select option D for that reason. Let's see here, actually. All right, so actually, as I go back up here, the student shows slow growth intervention should be reviewed. That looks better. All right, moving on. Here we go. We are at question 22, and we still have 26 minutes. We're doing just right, actually. All right. Which of the following best describes Tier 2 vocabulary words as defined by Beck, McEwen, and Kuchen's 3-tier framework? Remember that you will not only need to know instructional strategies, but there are some people within educational theorists and academics who have created these frameworks and theories. And again, they are all listed in our study guide. Just make sure that you have a grasp of who wrote about what. All right, so let's go here. So Tier 2 words, these are what's called high utility academic words. They appear all across subjects and genres, but are unlikely to be learned by just, peers speaking with peers. So kids talking with kids, right? And so these are words, think here, like analyze, significant, interpret. And for that reason, these are high frequency academic words, such as, okay, good, right here, yes, they have that. The example. All right, then next up, a first grade teacher uses a sound board with colored dots to have students tap a dot for each phoneme. As they stretch out a word, a student completes this accurately with 2 phoneme words, but makes consistent errors when words end in a consonant blend. Think here, past or jump. Which skill gap most directly explains this difficulty? So the student's errors appear specifically in words ending in consonant blends, which really require holding 3 or more phonemes in working memory and distinguishing closely through different sounds, right? And I see segmenting each phoneme in words with final consonant blends. That is the skill gap that most directly needs to be addressed. All right, next up. Here we go. According to evidence-based principles of systematic phonics instruction, which letter-sound relationship should a first-grade teacher introduce earliest in the school year? Read the answer options. Select the one that you think is the best. All right, as I see these, remember systematic phonics instruction begins with the most frequent and predictable patterns so that we can teach first what students need and want to use, such as short a, in CVC, consonant vowel consonant words, using consonants. So that's what we would teach first. Next up, let me just check the time. Okay, we're doing good. Which of the following correctly identifies the structural components of the word displacement? So in displacement, the free phoneme, remember this is called the base word, which is place, carries the core meaning, the prefix, dis, the suffix, ment. I'm looking here. Which of the following correctly identifies the structural component? Place is the base. Yep, exactly, just like that. A, is that what you got too? I'm sure it is. You're going to ace this because you are sticking around this video and getting lots of helpful prep. Let's go and read it. Which of the following best describes the primary purpose of teaching students to identify the narrator's point of view in a work of fiction? Oh, take a look at that. This is the last question. Nice. Is it to understand, to memorize, to identify, to evaluate? So the point of view shapes what the narrator knows, chooses to share, and how events are framed. So understanding this, it's going to help readers to critically think about whose perspective is centered and what information may be limited or perhaps even withheld, right? And so I'm going to go to understand the narrator's perspective and how it shapes the story. Next up, take a look at this. Let me just zoom on out. We've got the written response. All right, so what I would highly suggest for you to do right now is to take out your pen and paper. Just pause the video. I'll zoom in here. This is a prompt. Now, this prompt is honestly, it's easier than what our practice tests have. Our practice tests also have prompts where you type in and then our AI essay grader will score you based off a rubric, similar to what you'll be scored against on test day. But for the diagnostic test of your foundations of reading, well, first and foremost, we're going to keep it simple while still checking your understanding of the same content. So I would pause the video. I would write your response. Remember, the more work that you do, the better chance you're going to have to pass. I mean, I would love to say that you can just watch these videos and then you'll pass, but the truth is that you actually need to go ahead and do it alone. You need to take these questions. You need to actually type in this box instead of just watching, okay? Your brain is activated differently. However, I'm going to do this and I'm going to model how I would write. So let's go ahead and read the prompt. A first grade teacher notices that several students struggled to blend phonemes when reading unfamiliar words. Describe 2 evidence-based instructional strategies the teacher could use to develop phonemic awareness and phonics skills in these students. For each strategy, explain how it would be implemented and why it is effective for early readers. Again, pause the video. Actually, go ahead and literally write your response. And then I'm going to type mine. I'm already like prepared. I've already written it and I'm going to type it, but I've already tried this. So you can check what I would write compared to what you wrote. But again, pause the video, actually do it. All right, so write a thorough response of at least 150 words, address all parts. So I'm going to have to zoom in out a little bit so I can read this a little bit again. So, okay, let's just start right off. It's asked for evidence-based strategies. So 2 evidence-based strategies that directly address phoneme blending difficulties are Elkanin sound boxes and continuous blending with decodable text. Notice, very first sentence, just answer the question right away. That's what the test scorers want to see. Second, describe the 2 evidence-based instructional strategies the teacher could use. Strategy 1. And I'm just going to label it Elkanin sound boxes. Your test scores, if you do this, are going to love it. It just helps them read and find your answer. The teacher draws, let's say, a row of connected boxes. Think here like 1 per phoneme, and gives each student a set of small chips, or perhaps even tiles. So for a word like ship, there are 3 boxes. The teacher says the word slowly. The students push 1 chip into each box as they say each sound. For example, we would have like, and again, notice like I'm typing like a teacher, and that's what your test scorers want. Then the students slide the chips together while saying the whole word. Notice here how I'm explaining how this works. To start, the teacher would model with a 2 phoneme word such as at. Let me just make perhaps at, oops, sorry about that. Okay, at, or let's say up. And let's say before going on to complete 3. A type of 3 words. All right. So the reason this strategy works is because it gives students a physical anchor for an abstract process. And let's see, moving the chip turns each phoneme into something they can see and touch. All right, that looks good. I'm going to go on to strategy 2 again, labeling it continuous. What did I say? Blending with decodable text. Okay, so let's go ahead and explain this. The teacher explicitly and directly models blending by stretching out, or let's even use better words vocab, elongating each sound in a word without stopping, such as okay, just like that. Love it. Then the teacher smoothly says the word map. Oops. Smoothly. All right. Students practice first with isolated words on the cards and then immediately apply the same process in decodable readers, preps books, where every word follows the pattern that they are practicing. All right, let's see here. This strategy works because it mirrors what the students need to do when they see an unfamiliar word in print. All right, so I think that looks good. Mirrors, let me just double check the spelling and a little bit. Okay, let's go. Let's submit the diagnostic. It will take a moment here. What the computer is doing is it's scoring. Oh, wait, check that out. Met the requirement. We passed, got 290 out of 220. Let's go ahead. 11 out of 11, 8 out of 8, 6 out of 6. So we actually got all of the multiple choice correct. 3 out of 4, what? I was hoping to get 4 out of 4. What happened here? So I actually get individualized feedback. The response achieves the purpose of identifying and explaining 2 evidence-based phoneme blending strategies with solid subject matter. Okay, both Elk and what I want to see is, however, the response lacks specific citations. Oh, you know what? You're right. I could have gone back and actually used some of the data inside the prompt. So notice here how this literally it trains me on how to write more effectively. If you don't already have access to this full and complete test prep program, make sure you go to foundationsofreading.com. You need to take our diagnostic test, read our study guide, complete our workbook. Definitely complete the practice test. There's no better way to check whether or not you're ready on test day. Our practice tests literally simulate same amount of questions, same time countdown, also have the same 2 constructed responses, and it grades you just like what you'll receive on test day. If you are rusty on these technical terminologies, we've got flashcards. We have an entire section where you just practice writing. I have to say, this is the best test prep for Foundations of Reading on the internet. Make sure that you go ahead and click this. We want you to pass. Oh, let's go ahead. We can also review our questions. So we have all of the questions here. If any of them were wrong, this part would be marked as red. Like if for example, if I chose option D, but it was wrong, it would show option D in red, showing that I incorrectly marked it, but it would also show me the correct answer so that I can learn from my mistakes and continue to practice and refine my skills within Foundations of Reading. Thank you so much for watching. This video is proudly presented by foundationsofreading.com. Make sure you go here to access our blog posts, get our free practice test, and then once you're ready, click the link and we'll see you inside our full-length program. See you in the next video.